All right, I'd like to welcome everyone to another session here at the Winter SmartCom Summit in combination with the CPaaS Acceleration Alliance. I'm going to say good evening and good morning. We have a great panel today. I'm in the United States, in Salt Lake City, Utah, but our audience is really all over the world. And so we've decided to have a panel specifically tied to the Asian market and Southeast Asia specifically. And so we have a great group of guests here that are excited to share what's happening in their side of the world and give us a chance to talk through some of the local issues as well. First of all, I would like to introduce Boon Chee. Boon Chee, could you give us a little introduction and tell us a little bit about Bridge Alliance?
Sure. Thanks, Kevin. Really appreciate you inviting me to this session. Very honored to be on this. Maybe just a brief introduction of Bridge Alliance. We are essentially an alliance of mobile operators in Asia. So today we have about 34 member operators covering Asia, and having access to as many as more than 1 billion mobile users, right? And Bridge Alliance role is really to look for opportunities to help each of our member operators compete better and offer their services better in their respective markets, right? And we have a couple of key pillars, and more recently we have started to look at some of the regional solutions, and that's where we started to embark on the CPaaS journey. And quite happy to sit on the panel to share some of the experience and the journey that we've been through. So I look forward to the conversations we'll have later as well.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think you're definitely one of the leaders in the region and actually globally with what you're doing with CPaaS and other technologies. So we'll appreciate learning a bit more. Pankaj, tell us a little bit about yourself and EnableX.
Thanks, Kevin. Great to be here. Looking forward to an interesting discussion. EnableX is a full stack CPaaS platform provider, headquartered out of Singapore and operating globally today. So we are one of the few providers who offer our services both on our public cloud as a complete SaaS or a PaaS, as well as we work with operators. And we've engaged with Bridge Alliance in the past as well, where we work with operators to enable their CPaaS journeys, and been around for a couple of years now. And exciting times in the CPaaS industry today. So look forward to a very interesting discussion with all of you guys here.
All right, appreciate that. All right, and last but clearly not least, we've got Anurag, who is here from GTS. Give us a little introduction to yourself and Global TeleServices.
Hi, good morning and good evening to everyone. Hello from India. So I'm Anurag Aggarwal. I'm the Chief Growth Officer at Global TeleServices. We are a very large CPaaS organization ourselves. We've started primarily on the voice and the messaging side. But over a period of time, we've diversified into a number of solutions. We have a company called Technology Labs, which focuses primarily on operator platforms around blockchain and anti-fraud and firewall solutions. We have a fintech organization called FinBrain, which looks into KYC and identity management and online credit lending. And we also have an enterprise arm called Surf, which is looking into consent management and authentication. So basically, we are over a decade old. And in the last couple of years, we've diversified beyond just the traditional voice and messaging services into a whole suite of services, which offers different portfolios for enterprises, to the operators, to the other CSPs in the region.
Oh, appreciate that background. There is so much happening in your part of the world. I think that it's always been interesting. Personally, myself, I've lived a number of years in Japan, speak Japanese and done business in Japan for about 3 decades now, if I can say that out loud. Also lived for a short time in Malaysia, right there next door to Pankaj and Boon Chee, in Singapore. And so Asia has always been an important market for me, both personally and professionally. There isn't any better food anywhere in the world than places like Singapore and Tokyo and others. So the region is near and dear to my heart. But the other part that's really interesting, and Boon Chee, I think you mentioned this, you've got 1 billion mobile users in the region just on your alliance customers, right? So Let's start by having a little bit of a short conversation around how would you compare the Asian market with the US and EMEA? I'm sure we're going to have a number of local regional listeners, but we'll also have a number in the United States and in Europe. So if you were to just briefly share, what would you say is a big difference between the markets?
Perhaps I have to confess I'm not personally very familiar with the US and Europe market, but I would say in Asia, it's really highly fragmented, right? Even as we walk through the CPaaS journey with some of member operators, we did realize that each market has very unique requirements in the market. Surprisingly high level of customization as we introduce some of the services into the markets as well, right? So very often this is underestimated the complexity that's involved, ranging from a very somewhat more matured enterprise markets in countries like Singapore, Japan, and so on, and somewhat those that are less so and trying to catch up with some of the solutions that's made available to the enterprise customers. So our journey so far over the 2 years had really been a lot of discovery around how much of localization that may be needed. But the good thing is that the underlying platform that they require to enable CPaaS are fairly common. So it's really how do we then stack on solutions. And because the markets are so fragmented, their demand are so different, it therefore calls for a fairly wide portfolio of solutions that we enable on a platform. So you no longer can bring a single solution on the CPaaS platform to a particular operator in that market. You really need to equip it with multiple sets of different solutions and making them easy for consumption. So the way we look at it is that whilst we want to leverage on the telco's connectivity capability, augment them with solutions, it's also about the speed to market that we want to enable them. So this is some observations. I guess in some way there are similarities, but the high fragmentation that we experience, I suspect is a little bit different in that sense.
Right. Now, I think you bring up a good point and maybe a strong suit for CPaaS in the fact that it is a base platform with APIs that allows either the end user or a partner to do customization. And so being able to customize country by country, language by language is probably a real advantage. Pankaj, you mentioned that you're working globally. What are you seeing as differences between the different regions around the world?
So to add to what Boon Chee said in terms of the market being fragmented, we also see the maturity of the markets, right? So Europe or Americas are pretty mature markets across. While if you come into an Asian market on one spectrum, you have Australia and Japan. On the other side, you have Myanmar's of the world, where still probably 40 to 50% is feature phone market, right? So to add into what's being said here, right? The need of the solutions, even the enterprise definitions for these markets is very different. When we work with operators in India on one side, the kind of solutions that we talk about are very different to some of the other markets that we are talking to. In fact, we started work recently talking to some operators in Africa, and I'm not referring to South Africa here, but the smaller markets, the needs and expectations are very, very different. The user behavior, the buying behavior, the kind of solutions they are looking for. So what you just said about with CPaaS giving you the right building blocks, the local solution development, not only in terms of the language or localization, but even the kind of solutions that will get developed in these different markets will be very different. Right? So we are seeing that, while we're talking of a recession or a slowdown on one side, we are still seeing huge recruitment happening in markets like India. And we as a CPaaS player not only are offering or looking at doing APIs and SDKs, but we're also looking at bringing certain vertical solutions to the market, right? So not only the building blocks, but also co-creating certain solutions which can address different requirements. So some of the solutions that we're talking about in India are absolutely not relevant in a Singapore market. But Indonesia, there is a lot of excitement about them. So that diversity, not only in terms of local language and cultures, but the evolution or stage of where the markets are, makes Asia a very exciting market, right?
Right, right. Agreed,
And
agreed.
we're seeing a lot of that.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. So, Anurag, I think one of the things that I felt that I had pressure on coming into Asia, and particularly Southeast Asia, is pricing, right? So there seemed to be a need for really, really low discounts into the market. So is Asia a volume game, and therefore it's okay to have a lower price? Or are there other ways to drive higher margins in certain use cases? Maybe you could share with us a little bit on how the price points and the use cases can differentiate and still create a very lucrative business for you there.
Right. So, in fact, I was wondering that after Boon Chee and Pankaj, what new will I add? And incidentally, the very angle I thought about was pricing, Kevin. Now, actually, I have a slightly different point of view, and I'll start with that. And I know where you are leading to
Yeah.
as well. I'll come to that. Ironically, if you compare the mature markets, which everyone is talking about, like the US and the European markets, Southeast Asia and Middle East, especially, is seen to be going through major upswings in the last one or about, say, 2 years. What I mean by that is that let's take the SMS, the messaging part of it, which is a very crucial part of the entire CPaaS suite, right?
Hmm.
The messaging portfolio for most of the operators has started becoming significant as a major cash cow, as a major cash generator. So we see a lot of networks. Let's take Indonesia, for example. It has one of the highest A2P termination rates today globally. If we look into the Middle Eastern markets and the East European, Central Asian markets, some of these markets have got, again, one of the highest rates we've ever seen. We couldn't even imagine. If you look at India, for example, as well, what is the rate for a domestic message versus an international message has gone up over 30 times. So
Oh,
what's
wow.
firstly happening in these Southeast Asian and Middle Eastern markets is that the messaging rates are changing humongously. That has a major impact on the overall CPaaS options which enterprises start adopting. Because if you look at some of the international players, they've moved their communication from messaging to options such as in-app notifications. That
Mm.
brings a big challenge to the industry and players such as us, because we thrive on volumes going through throughout the world. But if these volumes are getting converted into a digital format, that reduces the pie for us overall, and that's a cause of concern for us as intermediaries, for the operators, for, I'll say, for the Bridge Alliance, maybe all the members there. It's a concern for everyone. That's the first part about what's changing. If you look at Africa, they say the next billion subscribers are expected from there. That is slowly starting to catch on to this trend as well. So this is a bit of an alarming trend, which is the difference between the matured European and American markets versus Southeast Asia, and Africa is coming on soon. Over and above that, yes, if you look at the per unit dynamics, if that's what you were referring to initially, India especially is a market where those rates are still one of the lowest in the world. Yes. What is a differentiating aspect which some of the leading CPaaS players in India are doing is that first and foremost, they offer truly omni-channel solutions, versus a multi-channel solution. What I mean by that is that their CPaaS players are building platforms which are capable of recording what is the preference and the consent of each and every user of the enterprise, and accordingly putting across the right message through the right channel, having the right fallback options, giving the right reply path options, and overall allowing a multimedia rich messaging experience versus a plain vanilla experience. Because as Pankaj said, feature phones, so there are platforms which are very well starting to recognize that who the end user is on a feature phone versus a smartphone, and accordingly targeting communication. This overall portfolio, this enhanced CPaaS omni-channel portfolio, is what is helping certain certain intermediaries and
Mhm.
solution providers be able to offer an enhanced solution over a plain vanilla, say, a messaging solution.
Right. Now that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. And I think omni-channel is critical. We'll talk a little bit more about the CSPs and how we go to market there. But I think as a service provider, if I'm reliant only on specifically SMS messaging, you're right, the price is going up. And so consumers are preferring WhatsApp and other OTT type of messaging platforms. And so I know that Pankaj, your platform provides omni-channel as an offering. How are service providers able to tap into omni-channel? If I'm a carrier, can I offer WhatsApp? Is that an option?
Yes. So Kevin, what is going to happen is, or what is happening is, CPaaS providers like us, we bring in multi-channel capabilities and give the ability to operator to bring their own infrastructure and leverage our layers to enable channels. So and we as a player is not going to only provide multi-channel but omni-channel, and the difference being the ability to seamlessly move around channels, the difference being ability to converge data from all these channels and do recommendation and actions based on that. So what is going to happen is, we as a provider will bring, as a CPaaS provider, will enable the layer, and underlying we will connect with the operator network on one side for the voice or the messaging side. We'll bring in the Meta APIs for WhatsApp, for example. Tomorrow we will bring in RCS, and ultimately the customer will get a single unified interface or a journey to consume all of these and have unified outcomes as well. So the whole thing will not be multiple dashboards giving silo informations, but converge into a more meaningful data set, which the customer can use for recommendations and decision making, right? Nowhere it is going to be only straightforward dumb data being given in reports. The evolution will be to give recommendations ultimately.
That's great. That's great. So what I'm hearing then is, traditionally as a service provider, I only had my own network that I could resell through a CPaaS, right? So essentially voice and SMS. And what you're telling me now is, as technology platform providers, we can now tap into other channels and allow service providers to actually continue to play in that broader game. Which leads me to a really important question, I think, for you, Boon Chee, is what role does the mobile operator have to play in this new game? Are they just now a mobile dumb pipe? If we just move that up in the air instead of in the ground? Or is there an opportunity now for them to take, these billion end users and figure out, a commercial model that allows them to monetize that installed base?
Right. I think it's a constant struggle that most operators will have, right? Getting out of this perception of being a dumb pipe. And I think all our member operators go through that journey of looking for opportunities to really provide a more comprehensive offering to the enterprise customers that they are going after, right? Today, part of the business rides on the connectivity business, but the customers are demanding a lot more than just pure connectivity. And usually they will like to have a single neck to choke, right? Because they don't want to have applications having quality issues that may be caused by connectivity, or could be application, or could be something in between, right? So, and henceforth, I think most of our members are looking at ways to which they can offer more complete solution end to end to their enterprise customers. And on the other spectrum, we also find that the consumer behavior are also changing. So for the B2B2C kind of enterprises, the demand for not just the traditional telco connectivity to reach out to the end customers is a channel. They also look for a complete solution that involve multiple different channels. And telcos still have the role in providing a significant portion of the connectivity. And really is how this can be all stitched together, right? In fact,
Right.
some of our members are even going further to say, okay, what other telco assets can be leveraged upon to augment this capability beyond just pure communications? So we started to look into authentication capability, location information, various telco APIs that can be exposed to complement what are some of these multiple channel communication capabilities are. Right, so that's where where we are looking into. I think certainly is a situation where it's not a it really calls for collaboration amongst the various ecosystem partners, right, to offer a more seamless end-to-end solution to the enterprise customers at the end of the day. I think that's how we will look at it, and I think telcos will continue to have a role to play, mainly because also of the rich assets that they have, and I would say a portion of which are still fairly underutilized today.
And just to add to that, and we're working currently with two different operators, and without getting into names here, we are seeing a very, very stark difference between how they are looking at adopting these capabilities. And the way we see it, it depends on the sales psyche or the kind of sales organizations they run. Like you said, Kevin, being a mobile dumb pipe. So a lot of sales organizations are used to selling that. So one of the operators we're working with is really struggling from being able to sell CPaaS because the sales is not oriented to do solution selling or selling to business stakeholders rather than admin and IT, right? On the other side, the other operator has hired a lot of people from solutions from other CPaaS providers. And the difference that we are seeing is those product guys are able to aggressively go and pitch solutions built on our CPaaS platforms to enterprises. So a lot of it is actually on the orientation or how these operators are able to transition from a traditional pipe selling to a very solution selling orientation.
Right.
And
Right.
I just want to add to that, especially what Boon Chee was saying, that it's very true that operators are realizing that they have many more assets beyond just being, and I hate to use that word dumb pipe, but yeah, I mean that's what we all become in some sense. Today, I am personally seeing that there are two new variants of CPaaS which are starting to become very popular. One is around silent authentication, something which I think Boon Chee touched upon, authentication. So I personally feel that the SMS mechanism of multi-factor authentication in the next 4 to 5 years will almost become passe, because eventually this model has so much of friction in it, and users are always looking at a more frictionless environment for authentication. So operators are actually helping out by silently authenticating. So the silent authentication feature that is becoming very popular and will pick up trending over the next couple of years. Another major area is mobile identity. I think we've not touched upon that yet so much, but there are so many attributes which an operator possesses about the end subscriber, and while ensuring that things are shared within a data privacy trusted mechanism, there is so much information, so many demographical characteristics, so many socioeconomic characteristics which can be shared with the right enterprises to be able to reach out to the right target audience. Today we're talking about hyper personalization and micro segmentation. So that requires that's a very data heavy approach. You're talking about creating a data lake where a number of data attributes are coming together and seamlessly connecting with each other to provide an online persona of each human being. So the mobile operators are playing a very significant role where they're helping out in mobile identity, and that's something which will pick up in the next couple of years as well.
Yeah. No, you bring up a good point. I think one of the questions that I often get is how do the CSPs, the mobile operators, compete with the over-the-top players? And I think you touched on a couple of those, but I think there's a broader conversation to be had here. I believe, all of us, myself included in my past life, have been really working and partnering with CSPs as our way to market. And so if we look at the kind of high-level market, maybe first of all, who are the major kind of global players that you are seeing? So I'm assuming that Twilio has offices in most of the the major cities in the region now. I think I've seen a little Infobip and Vonage. Who else would you say would be kind of a major retail over-the-top CPaaS player in the region?
So you would see somebody like channel specific ones like maybe an Agora, which would be more video centric or streaming centric or focus more on the gaming side. You would see somebody like an IMI Mobile, now Cisco, right? You would probably look at somebody like a Plivo when it comes to more on the voice side. But if you really look at a full stack or a omni-channel, you probably won't see a lot beyond Twilio and 1H.
Okay.
I think Cinch would be another notable mention for sure. I mean, I think especially if you look at from a size and scale perspective, after Twilio, I think second in line comes as Cinch. Well, of course, right now I think most of these players are having a beating in the market, but yes, but still, it's one of the oldest and the largest ones. And also, just to touch upon one aspect that I agree with what Pankaj is saying. It's channel specific, it's also region specific. So if you are looking at a true omni-channel stack, you start talking more domestic. And the minute you start talking an international market, it's typically single channel strategies. So, if you're looking at the major OTT players, like say, and here I'm referring to the likes of a Meta or an Amazon or a Microsoft or a Google, they have very comprehensive architectures in place whereby they take single APIs per channel rather than looking for an entire communication stack, because their own stacks itself are so deep. So from that perspective, and at an international scale, the likes of a Twilio or a Cinch or an Infobip, they would be offering separate services based on the enterprise requirement, because the enterprises are technologically quite advanced. But the minute you talked about wanting to offer a whole CPaaS suite, that typically the domestic traditional enterprises would be looking for.
Interesting. That's right. That makes sense. So, Boon Chee, how do you see your mobile operators being able to compete with some of these bigger brands?
Yeah, you see, I think okay, well, at least in the conversations that I had with our members, I don't think we see them really as competitors per se, because I think that if you look at Asia as a whole, I think there's still market enough for differentiation in service offerings, right? The likes of Twilio, Infobit certainly have their roles to play, right? Being able to offer global connectivity. If you want termination to multiple markets, you have a single API to do that. I think they will continue to exist for and serve that capability very well. But more importantly, as you look into every single enterprise requirements in each market, actually they're quite unique. And of course, enterprises who themselves have some development capabilities could leverage and may know how to leverage. Or they may ride on certain SIs to help them, system integrators to do that. And the system integrators themselves may be familiar with the use of how Twilio APIs work and so on. But by and large, if you look at some of the workflow, there is I would say a combination of what the telcos can offer and do for the enterprise in order to offer the solution to them versus what will be made available by the OTT players. So I feel that in Asia, at least, there will be opportunity for coexistence. I guess we don't really see that as competition per se. Of course, if you compare purely based on SMS termination, for example, then yes, right? Then you are comparing enterprise buying SMS from a telco versus buying from a OTT player. But otherwise, if you look at solution offering, which I think that's where we observe our enterprise customers to be leaning towards, then I think it's a very different lens. And I think I would see that collaboration model more so than the competition model.
Okay, well, that makes sense. I think, yes.
Sorry. So I'll add something to this, yes. And going back to a couple of points which came up earlier. A, Asia being a highly price-sensitive market, right? And B, the ability to leverage the operator or a CSP infrastructure to offer CPaaS services in the enterprises will still give the CSPs a very strong play. See, when you look at some of these Twilios and the big global players, historically we've seen they've they don't price differently for Asian markets, right? And the Asian markets we all talked about are price sensitive. It's a volume market a lot more than a value market, if I may. And the second part would be, with players like us, for example, we kind of work with CSPs or operators to leverage their infrastructure in offering CPaaS services, which gives a further cost benefit to the operator to be able to compete. Combine that with the existing strong enterprise relationships. The CSPs will have a strong local play, which will be difficult for some of these bigger guys to crack, especially in the Asian markets.
Right. No, I agree. I think two additional thoughts based on some of my past experience as well is oftentimes we forget still that the most important part of a CPaaS or any advanced service is the phone number, right? And so the operators own the phone numbers, and frankly, the international market for many of these DIDs is very high. And so I think owning that phone number on the network ends up being a significant differentiator. And I also think that they have a quality advantage. As you were mentioning, they're on their network, they have their own ops teams, they're not buying something over the top. And so I've always felt that there's a quality. And then ultimately, I think the biggest advantage is their brand, right? I think the fact that I could go talk to 1,000 people on the streets of Jakarta and say Twilio, and not a single person would recognize that name. But if you say Indosat or one of the local brands there, you would have 100% brand recognition. So I think that's why it's exciting, particularly in that region, to be focused on CSPs as a channel. But with that, one of the big topics really coming to the top here in the United States is AI and chatbots. Are we seeing that similar technology roll out in Asia? I know, Anurag, you work a lot with security and implementation and different specific types of deployments. What's your take? Is AI and chatbots, is that a thing now, or is that 2 years from now? What's the timing on this?
So firstly, if you look at chatbots, Kevin, I think they've been in existence for a while now. But what we are seeing now in the last couple of years is, or not even couple of years, I'll say in the last year, the significant uprise of AI. You've seen ChatGPT suddenly, take the world by storm, and we are talking about AI much more. It's become almost like a common man's language now. Everyone uses the word AI. It sounds very sexy also. So I think everybody loves to use these terminologies, AI and ML. But yes, I think these will start playing a very significant role in the CPaaS space. We are seeing a lot more. If I look at some of our enterprise customers, for example, especially when I talk about the mobile apps, which are constantly proliferating the market, we see that there is more and more dependence on AI and chatbots for giving a human-like interface for your A2P communication. So, or rather, let's put it P2A communication. Actually, more from that perspective. So we see that today enterprises are depending, falling a lot more onto these well AI-enabled chatbots to cater to the user queries which are coming up a lot. We saw that especially with the incoming of the pandemic in the last 3 years, the entire landscape has changed, and especially now when we see a lot of these layoffs happening. Of course, those layoffs are happening more in the big tech companies, but you see similarly, if you go the other end of the spectrum also, you see a lot of layoffs happening at an entry level where a lot more of these activities are getting automated. So if you look at our industry from the P2A perspective, from the end user, the customer originated perspective, we do see these chatbots playing a lot of role. I'll take a minute. I'll talk about, you mentioned about CSPs and how the entire ecosystem is playing together. I have a beautiful example I'd like to share. We have the one of the largest operators in the world and one of the largest, of course, in India, Reliance Jio. Now, Jio is known as a conglomerate which is almost into anything and everything. In the last 1 year, one of their subsidiaries known as JioMart, which is into supplying online groceries and your daily household items. They partnered with WhatsApp, and they developed a chatbot enabled platform wherein a user commerce journey, the entire user buying journey from entering into the mart using a WhatsApp chat, to making a choice from a carousel of options, to making a purchase using a payment gateway option called UPI, which has been again a very innovative offering by India, to being able to get the entire purchase experience through WhatsApp. That entire experience has been automated through an OTT player along with a chatbot present, an AI enabled chatbot. So today we see that these AI enabled chatbots, in the next 2 to 3 years, I say there is still a lot more to be done. In fact, nowadays we started hearing about chat GPT also not being that effective. So people have now, when sort of their entire noise has started dying down a bit, you're starting to see some of the cracks also which are there. So I think this technology will, of course, play a significant role in the coming years. It has already started impacting, but yes, I take a horizon of next 2 to 3 years when these chatbots will become far more alarmingly human-like in their interactions, and the P2A interactions will be a lot more automated by these technologies.
Yeah, I like the idea of you bringing up P to A in the fact customer engagement is such a big important part of CPaaS, and so having P to A where myself as a consumer can reach out and engage with the business is, really, really, I think a key deliverable in the customer experience that CPaaS technology can bring. And so having that technology there makes a lot of sense. Pankaj, feel free to carry on here, but I also wanted to ask, are there some local technology companies in the region that the rest of the world, maybe there's more advances on AI and chatbot and so forth coming out of your backyard than we know about? So maybe even throw out some names or brands that the rest of us should look at too.
I'll add a different perspective here. So Anurag talked a lot about chatbot side of it and how AI is helping here. We've been seeing a lot of AI work in the video and voice side of it. So and we being focused a lot more. So that's more of an area we've invested a lot more time. So there's some very exciting work that we've seen happening both locally and even some European companies that we work with. So we are seeing a lot of emotion analysis or sentiment analysis in real time, not only on voice, which people have been doing for a while, but there is some very interesting work happening in video and analytics or AI on video in real time, and especially use cases around healthcare, for example, remote patient monitoring, or in recruitments or hiring processes where during interviews, live emotion analysis are being used to augment the interviewing process, for example, right? So there are, and on the voice side as well, we are seeing some very interesting companies coming out of India, where these guys are actually doing analytics, helping specific industries or verticals. So one area where we've seen a lot of work is in the whole human resources side, right from a hiring journey to engagement journey. We've seen how video and voice AI being extensively used not only to assess the interviewee or the candidate, but even bring in efficiency on the recruiter side. Now, we're working with one of the largest employers in India, and their challenge is that our interviewers are not very effective. They have 1,200 plus recruiters, and they're trying to see how AI can help analyze the process of interviewing and how can they bring in more efficiency in that process. So the whole play around AI will evolve more across channels. So, ChatGPT, Anurag talked a lot about how chatbots will evolve. But a lot of my bigger bet is around voice and video analytics. And again, linking it back to what I initially talked about, how CPaaS or omni-channel will evolve. All this data points coming from AI plus communication will ultimately give a very powerful recommendation suite to the enterprise customer. So a combination of communication, data, and AI will bring a convergence, which will make a decision making better from an enterprise consumer of CPaaS.
Yeah, I want to echo
That's great
what
background.
Pankaj. Yeah, I want to echo what Pankaj mentioned, and I think from where I see it, the AI certainly have a very significant role to play, and I think there's a lot more room for it to continue to enhance the engagement because the consumer behavior today also changed, right? Historically, they are quite used to chatbots, so they are probably okay with it. But today, their way to engage with companies and brands are so diverse. And therefore, the AI, whilst we look at it in silo, chat bot, your voice bot, and then your video AI, ultimately, you want to enhance the engagement, right, with the customers at the end of the day through multiple channels. And that will be a lot more demanding on the AI in understanding it. And why that is what actually the pandemic also in Asia actually shed some light into how we see that behavior, the demand also change. So for one, for example, in the countries that we saw being hit by pandemic, suddenly a lot of contact centers, they don't have enough agents to be running that. Then suddenly they are stuck with having to handle a lot more calls, but with a lot less resource. So that's where again, your AI could come in to at least relieve some of this load and be able to filter some of the more routine kind of inquiries and so on. And the other thing that we saw happening was because of the pandemic, very frequently the policies changes, the rules change. That also demand a more intelligent way to change your scripting and so on. So I think all this, shed some light into, I think AI has a significant role to play. I think there's a lot more that AI can do to help enterprise become more effective in engaging their customers.
Right. No, absolutely. We're just at the tip of the iceberg, as they say on this one, as far as the possibilities. And I think the fact that as platform providers, we have an opportunity to play a major role in the fact that you don't necessarily have to come up with the technology yourself. The beauty of a CPaaS platform is you have APIs to plug in other partners. And, I know that in the past that I've worked with technology providers that are in Malaysia. So Bahasa they're better at understanding it than somebody that's doing Chinese or English. Similar in Japan with Japanese. And so I think that's the other thing that's really interesting about this and new technologies is that you now have a common platform that you can plug in. So you're never out of date. You're always able to bring in the next best thing. So speaking of the next best thing, what should the rest of the world know about Asia and your markets particularly? Boon Chee, let's start with you. You're in one of my favorite cities, Singapore. Why do I want to visit Singapore? Why do I want to do business in the region? Maybe just share a couple of high-level thoughts with us.
Sure. I think it's not just Singapore. I think a lot of cities in Asia are really beautiful. So if you don't have a chance to visit, please come by. I think more importantly, I would say Asian market is really an exciting and vibrant market. I think the other thing that we didn't quite talk about is there are really a lot of small pockets of development capabilities in various parts of Asia. And for say partners who are based in US or Europe, right? I think if you're worried about localization, I would say, don't worry because you always will be able to find local partners whom can help augment. And I do believe this is really an ecosystem that we can create. It's not about competition alone. I think there's a certain level of competition, but the collaboration opportunity is just there, right? So I would say yes. Come Asia, I think there's a lot of things that we can do together.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, and highlighting the local development talent. Each of the countries really does have a real, I think, young, vibrant crowd of developers and that are really pushing innovation. I totally agree with
And
that.
yeah,
Um,
and to add to that, sorry, I mean to interrupt.
that's
I
okay.
just want to mention before I forget it. To also mention that I think the telcos in this part of the world are also changing, right? They are also a lot more open to collaboration, right? So
Hmm.
a lot of members are very happy to work with ecosystem partners to really bring the best of breed solution to the market. So I think that's where we will open our arms and welcome any kind of collaboration that we can work on.
Yeah, that's a great point. Um, Anurag, how about you? What would you highlight as a key element in why someone should look at Asia as an opportunity?
Thank God, I thought you'll ask Pankaj first, and then I won't have any points remaining. Well, so I mean, I'll still leave a lot more of Southeast Asia maybe for Pankaj to touch upon, and maybe I'll focus on one market itself, which should suffice for now, and that's India. First and of course, foremost, of course, the country brings it with it 1.4 billion target user base. So that itself makes it very lucrative for any enterprise, for any brand looking at entering our country. I think the only one important nuance which I would like to highlight, and this generally holds true for overall Southeast Asia and Africa, but especially I've seen this in India, that the perception which you also started with, Kevin, initially in the conversation about the per unit dynamics being so low. So where are the margins and how can a player actually survive? So yes, first and foremost, thanks to the volumes, one is able to see a business case being fairly lucrative in India. That's first and foremost. Secondly, the Indian mentality, also, if I may put it, is changing. If you look at from an ARPU perspective, yes, the average revenue per user in India still might be one of the lowest in the world, but over a period of time, there is an increasing base of discerning youth who are prioritizing convenience and ease of use over just the cost dynamics of it. This has actually opened up a significant market for the entire app community and also for the CPaaS players. So what I'm getting at is that this increasing youth, and by this I'm talking about typically youngsters ranging from the age of say 15 to say about 30, 35. uh, Boon Chee and Pankaj, we are also in the same category. We are also young. We'll keep Kevin out for now. But
Oops.
He
the
will
jokes
just
apart,
edit this part out now.
yeah. No, I was just kidding. But
Of
what I was
course.
getting at was that the youngsters out here in India with an increasing buying potential. What we are seeing is that these youngsters are able to the demand that they are generating both from apps and from their communication preferences is leading to a very significant market opening up for CPaaS providers to bring in differentiated requirements. Like even Pankaj
Yep.
touched upon that AI is just not for communication. It's coming into voice and video, for example. So in short, I'm saying that it's a very lucrative market in India. There is this one segment in India which itself holds a significant promise for both for enterprises and for communication channels. And I believe that in the coming days, there'll be a lot more technology targeted towards this segment, and
Yep.
it should be a very interesting watch for all of us.
Agreed. Agreed. Pankaj, any final thoughts there on
So
the travel bureau here?
I'll just build on what Anurag said here. We talk about 1.4 billion in India, but let's look at it like this: two-thirds of the world population lives in Asia,
Mm.
right? So you're talking of probably 4 billion people across Asia, and a highly distributed geography, right? So you look at India, you look at Indonesia with number of islands, you look at the rest of Southeast Asia. The need and opportunity to enable high quality communication is fundamental to this region because of its nature. Second, again, building on the youth, the young population is also very tech savvy. Not only have they got the buying or the purchasing power, but they're also natively born on smartphones, right? And these are guys who are used to in-app engagements. Everything for them is within an app, right? Whether it's voice, whether it's messaging, whether it's video. So for the rest of the world, this is the biggest market for communication consumption. And with the savviness, with the penetration of mobile devices, smart devices, this is the market, the way we see it, for any communication solution provider to be in.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, I agree.
That's how we see it. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember when I was about 22 years old, I was a young sales guy in Japan, and this older gentleman who was a customer of mine took me aside and he said, "Kevin, telecom is where it's at." I'm going, okay. He said, "You find a place where there's lots of people, you sign them up, and they pay you every month." And so it's like, if that's the philosophy, then there isn't a better place in the world to do business than there in Asia, for all the reasons you just shared. So totally agree. So just as we're closing, just on a personal note, Boon Chee, what's up? What's coming up for you? Any travel? Any conferences? Any ski trips? What's happening in your part of the world for you personally?
Looking forward to a very exciting year. So Chinese New Year just it was still in the midst of the 15 days, right? So I think looking forward to a very exciting year. It's the year of the rabbit, so a lot of hopping around and hoping as well.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be an exciting year. Certainly, as we continue the CPaaS journey, I also hope to have the opportunity to work with a lot more partners along the way, right? To explore new ideas. I think Asia is a fantastic place to be experimenting a lot of different things and putting into good hands of the enterprise customers to use. Yeah.
No, appreciate that. We appreciate our partnership with Bridge Alliance, with the CPaaS Acceleration Alliance, and collaborating and working together. You have a conference coming up in March, right?
That's right. We have a conference that we typically invite all the our member operators together, and the CEOs, the CMOs, and so on. So that's happening on the 21st of March. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, in Singapore.
Pankaj,
it's physical.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. In Singapore, in person. That's great. I'm glad we're back to that. Yeah. Speaking of in person, you probably have some travel coming up, Pankaj. What's up for you in the coming weeks?
So lots of travel actually. So I'm in London over the next few days. Got a couple of things planned there, and then I look forward to seeing you guys at the MWC, and a little bit of a break in between. A small golf trip planned with a few friends.
Very nice. So where will that be? What part of the world do you choose to do that?
There's no better place than Southeast Asia for that, right? So we end up playing in Indonesia. We recently played in Vietnam over the New Year's. So lots of options to play in Southeast Asia there. And so some exciting stuff. And the other thing on the work side also, there is some events we're going to participate. So we're doing something in Dubai with the Dubai Internet Summit, Dubai Retail Summit. So there's some stuff doing there. So lots of travel, lots of exciting stuff, and a good business in the Chinese New Year. I'm half Singaporean now, so enjoying that part for sure.
Excellent. No, I look forward to getting together in person in Barcelona. And Anurag, what's happening for you over the next little bit?
Well, I guess, of course, first and foremost, there's Barcelona. And I think the other event which is coming up in March is the Capacity Middle East in Dubai. That's another significant one. And what's interesting is that these regional conferences are no more regional. So we see almost the entire international community present at almost all these regional events. GTS is part of another forum called the Mobile Ecosystem Forum, which is another very significant body within the CPaaS space and has been around for a while. So we are in fact bringing a lot of people into our country. So we have what is called the MEF Roundtable India being hosted in April by GTS. So that's something which is coming up soon. We'll extend invitations to all of you, and it would be great to possibly see you in Mumbai in the start of April. That's an event where you have all your various CSPs, OTTs, and the entire ecosystem converge over a day of discussions on what's happening in India and also in some of the Southeast Asian markets. So that's what's up on the cards.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, gentlemen, I appreciate the time together today. I think we've covered a lot of really, really interesting points, and I think we've given a good flavor of what's happening in the region, and hopefully we'll bring some new partners and some new opportunities to the group. So again, thank you very much, and look forward to our next session in the coming months.
Look forward to that. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Thank you. Thanks, Pankaj.
Thank you,
Anurag.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Boon Chee and Pankaj.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.